Today's episode is with the one and only Edmonton-based Jason Gregor. And before I dive into the podcast episode today, I want to tell you a little bit about my new online program. How it works is we will have weekly video call meetings. You'll get customized programming from me with video demos linked in to the Google spreadsheet. And once a month, you will have access to a 1-hour session with me via a video call. So if you have a home gym, I will cater it to the equipment you have. If you have limited to no equipment, I will cater it to what you have going on. Like, we can innovate, we can create. You don't have to fit in anybody else's box. You have the support of other people in the group along with you. We'll have a private Facebook group. The value is built into this. If you were to train with me one-on-one, in person, or on a video call, the rate is much higher. And so this is my offering that enables you to have quicker, easier access to my services in a way that suits these unprecedented times when we don't know what's open and what's closed. Because at the end of the day, being active, feeling good about yourself, feeling empowered is one of the things that we have control of. It's about controlling what you can control. I'm going to add in some testimonials from some of my past and present clients, just to kind of give you a reason to check me out.
Hey guys, my name is Lacintha, and I am here to ask you to do yourself a favor and go and try a personal training session with my friend Chris. Chris is an amazing person, human being, somebody who does a lot for our community, somebody who is always working hard to make sure that everybody feels seen, everybody feels special, and he's always looking for ways that he can uplift people. When I tried personal training with Chris, I found him to be a very compassionate, knowledgeable, empathetic, and positive trainer. He always looked at ways that he could take my niggly, self-doubting ways and words and turn them around to make me feel empowered. That's a very big plus for somebody like me who tends to sometimes be a little hard on myself, as some of us do. And I found that when Chris I would say something like, oh, this is weak or that is weak, and he'd be like, no, it's not weak, you just did that thing. So that kind of positive enforcement was something that I responded very well to. I also found that he knows his stuff, he knows his work, he knows his training. He gets to know his clients really well in that he's able to work with your positives. He works with your limitations as well. You don't have to be a fit person. You don't have to be somebody who is injury-free. You don't have to be somebody who has ever stepped foot in a gym. If you've never been to a gym before, or if you've been to a gym all your life, if you've trained with a trainer all your life, or you've never been with a trainer, Chris is your guy, because he will work with everybody from a beginner level to somebody who is advanced. He does offer modifications, so if you're not feeling great, it's not your day, and things are just, you're not feeling that, you're not feeling the exercise or the workout, he's able to offer modifications so that you can still do the pose, you can still get into the target areas, you can still get the workout even if you're not feeling great. On the other side, if you're feeling really good and really strong and you're having a really good day, he can modify the activity, modify the exercise, and you can go as far as you want.
So my name's Erin. I started seeing Chris, it would have been about January, and it's now July, so 6 or 7 months of training with Chris. We started off doing like full training sessions virtually. He would send me everything I needed to do, sets and reps, and then we'd check in once a week, and it was pretty independent. He would answer any questions I had. So since January, it's evolved to the point where we've really narrowed down my training to just specific things that I need to work on. So Chris has really met me where I'm at every week. He takes my feedback seriously, and he also makes it really fun, and he treats all of his clients like human beings, and he expects all the same from them. So he has a really great group of people behind him, and he works really hard to gain your respect and to build a good relationship with you. So I hope everyone that he continues to work with is doing really great, and I wish him all the best. He's definitely given me new perspectives and better ways to think about a healthy lifestyle being so much more than just exercise. He'll always kind of touch on the mental health piece and work-life balance, time management, good sleep, nutrition. So yeah, I really respect Chris, and I hope he continues to help many, many people. Thanks, Chris.
If you would like more information, you can reach out to me directly, chris@invigoratetraining.com, or you can contact me on any social media platform, or you can go to my website, www.invigoratetraining.com. Thank you. Welcome to The Lifestyle Chase, Season 2. This podcast features high performers who have found a way to live their best life while balancing their health, wellness, friends, and family. I'm your host, Chris Little. Let's get started. The Lifestyle Chase is brought to you by Yeg Fitness. Yeg Fitness is Edmonton, Alberta, Canada's healthy lifestyle community, creating and supporting active living for all. Check them out online at yegfitness.ca and on social media at Yeg Fitness. So welcome to the Lifestyle Chase. This is episode 136, and I am joined today by Jason Gregor. How are you doing?
I'm excellent, Chris.
So what's your morning routine? It seems like you get up pretty early. What's the first thing that you do?
Well, it depends. If I get up on my own, then I just kind of go downstairs and peruse the internet for a little bit, and then I wait for my son to get up. But a lot of times he might wake me up first. So between 6:30 and 7, usually I'm up, and then I get to spend time with him in the morning, and we make breakfast and have fun chats with a 6-year-old.
What's the funniest thing that he said recently?
Now he kind of, the other day he was just like, "Hey, Dad, I think you need to calm down." So he just says that he's quite fun. He's quite observant. He asks a lot of questions right now, which is really good, and we have a lot of fun. We do a lot of physical activities, and it's a super fun age. Every age has been fun, but this age is a little bit more fun just because he's becoming kind of more interactive and asks lots of questions, and now he can read everything on his own. So you can't really pull any punches with him anymore. So that's good.
That's awesome. So before we dive too far into this episode, for anybody that doesn't know who you are, because Edmonton's going to know who you are, but not necessarily people from like Hawaii if they're listening. If you could give yourself a bit of an elevator pitch, what would it sound like? What's you in a nutshell?
I think I got a good life. I'm really lucky. I'm kind of unique in the sense that I own my own radio show on TSN 1260. It's a sports talk show, weekdays from 2 to 6. And basically I just rent my airtime and then go out and get all my advertisers on my show. Jason Strudwick, former NHLer, is one of my co-hosts, as well as Connor Halley. I also write at OilersNation.com, so I like to write, so I mix that in. And then, married, got a young son who's 6, and I like to, we have a family farm, so spend a lot of time out at the farm. Probably don't look like it, but I'm very much a farmer. I know how to birth cows, preg test, do all that sort of fun stuff.
That's awesome. I was doing a bit of quick reading, and like your role on the family farm seems to be very meaningful to like who you are. It seems to be a grounding experience. Can you expand a bit more on that? Like, tell me a bit more about what being on the farm means to you.
Well, I love it because, my job now, you're covering pro sports, and, it's a very unique playground. And I think that it's not really the reality. I worked in the oil field for many years till I went back to radio school, and when I was 27. So I think I have a good grasp of what normal people are dealing with, and where sometimes in the sporting world you can, some people are just they're not really in touch with everything that's going on. So going back to the farm is a real grounding thing for me. The cows don't care what you do or who you are. They need to be fed, or they need to be vaccinated, or whatever they do. So I just like it. It reminds me a lot, of growing up. But we've had the family farm since I was 1 year old. So that's where I grew up, and a lot of my best memories with my late father are there. So going back to the farm also reminds me of him, and now I get to take my son, and he gets to experience farm life. I think it's good. Just you learn how to work, and he's gardening, he's helping clean up, and helps feed the cows in the wintertime and different things like that. That I just think, for me, it builds a good base of what hard work is, because at the end of the day, I find if you want to be successful in anything you do in life, it's usually those who are hardworking. Like there's some, I hear God-given talent. Well, you might have some talent, but if you don't work at proving that and increasing it, it doesn't really matter. So hard work at the end of the day in any occupation, the people that are most successful are usually the ones who work the hardest.
Definitely. And so if you could correlate something that you've learned in your times on the farm to your career as like a self-employed radio host, like not many people have their own broadcasting company the way you do they?
No, it's pretty rare for sure. And to be honest, I didn't even think it was a possibility when I went to radio school or anything. I didn't have a business background. I guess kind of got an Excel spreadsheet and figured it out. Sat down with my mom one day and said, okay, this is how much money I got to bring in, because this is what I got to take out. And kind of, just went from there. But, a lot of it is you can't get frustrated, at the farm. Every day is new. I'm somebody who I don't love having the exact same thing every day. I think like anybody, I have certain routines that I enjoy, but my show is very different every day. I don't get bored by it. There's new guests. You're asking new questions every day. There's always a different story. You can't predict how a game's going to be. So, I like that. And really at the farm, like for instance, in calving season, you don't know exactly which cow is going to have a problem. And thankfully most don't. But when they do, you kind of got to, ad lib. And I've had to do some things under stress over times with cows. We had to drag it out from a snowbank and keep it in the tub for 6 hours, slowly warming it up so it didn't freeze, and it lived. So you just kind of, you can't get scared over that stuff. Like I always wanted to be a vet when I was a kid, and I never did it. So I've taken a few little minor courses, so I know how to preg test and stuff like that. But, the farm life really is just an encapsulation of every day you got to get up and give your best, because if you don't do it, the work's not going to get done.
Yeah. Well, I like that correlation, because then anybody can relate to that, no matter where they're at in their life or what industry they're in. You kind of alluded to your big career shift when you're like 27 or so. So tell me a bit more about that. What happened in your life there?
Well, I finished playing just, low-level junior hockey, and when I was 20, it was lots of fun, but I was never going anywhere. I never thought about that. My older brother played minor pro for many years. He was a much better player. And so when I was, I'd worked in the oil field, and then I did go to Nate, when I was probably 23 or 4, there's this, or no, actually maybe 21. There's this health, safety, and environment technology program where they actually paid you to go to school. You got paid an hourly rate while you're there. Like I didn't really have much interest in it, but I thought I should go to school. So I did that, and it really wasn't my thing. It wasn't that challenging at all for me. So I ended up working at a place called Premium Oilfield Inspection. I ended up doing ultrasonic testing for downhole drill pipe. And, it was a really good job for a long time. I made a lot of money doing it. I was lucky enough to save most of it. So, but it wasn't my thing. One day, I guess a quick short story. The reason I quit eventually was I was working in a place, Killam, Alberta. And usually I was the operator of my own, so I got my own hotel room. But in the summertime, they would downsize, so you had to share a room. And so I had to share a room with a guy. And the first night, I fell asleep early, no problem. But the second night, I was up. I was watching playoff hockey, I think. And he was sleeping, and I never heard anybody snore like that in my life. And so, all night I'd throw pillows at him, didn't stop. And so finally at like 4:35 in the morning, I took my duvet off, went in the bathroom, laid on the floor, made a sleeping bag under the sink. and just laid there. And I remember looking up and saying, man, there's got to be more to life than this. I don't want to be here for the rest of my life. And I was single at the time. I didn't have kids, so it was kind of easier to make that change when you're not responsible or you have bills. I just had a mortgage, and I'd saved up money, so it was fine. So I basically went home, and my mom was very educated. She got her doctorate and everything. And I just said, hey, this is what I want to do. I've always kind of wanted to be a sports broadcaster, or at least had a lot of people tell me that's something I was good at. So I just went to Nate and signed up, and I actually had to take college prep courses for the first semester just to get up a few of my grades, because it's pretty competitive to get in. And then I got in and started in January of 2000. And, it's been an unreal 20 years since then. It's gone by really fast, and it's led me to places I never really thought possible. I thought I would always have to go to a smaller market to start out, but I kind of lucked out and got to work with John Short right in Edmonton, and I've never left.
That's awesome. Going back to school at that point and having to do like those college prep courses, stuff like that, like, were there any doubts in your mind, or were there any naysayers around you?
Well, a lot of the people I worked with, because a lot of guys had tried to get out of the oil field, and I think it's difficult because you just get used to, at that time, the money, and it's a routine. And so I left in what it was September to go back to school, and a lot of them were like, oh, you'll be back. And I had a good relationship with the owners of the company, and I told them, I said, hey, I'd love to work here for a month over Christmas, and then in the summertime, because I could make good money, and I knew how to do everything. And so they really encouraged me. But there was a few guys at work who said, hey, you'll be back. But, I've met a lot of them years later, and, they're all pretty excited that, kind of went from the oil field to what I'm doing now. So, you're always going to have naysayers, but that didn't bother me. I didn't, I was more so my own, you're your own worst critic, or you're your biggest supporter. At the end of the day, if you don't believe in yourself, no one else is going to. So I'd taken some pictures actually from work, and I put them up in my room and where I lived at the time, and it wasn't because I didn't disrespect that lifestyle at all. I had a lot of respect for it, and I saw how hard it was for married guys to be working away sometimes. Like you'd leave November 1st and you'd come home December 23rd and leave again on December 26th, and that's really tough. Like my parents were around, and I didn't want that lifestyle for me. And I didn't have kids at the time, but I was hoping that I would in the future. So that was another big reason. Like it didn't fulfill me. It didn't challenge me educating at all after a while. Like I used to hope something would go wrong with the pipe, because then at least you could figure it out. And it wasn't, it just wasn't for me. It's a tough job for a lot of people, but it wasn't for me. And so I had a few naysayers, but I had a lot of people who were like, man, you'll be good at this, because I've always reading the paper. Like they kind of joked with me. I read both papers every day. I've got a really good memory for stats and different things like that. And I kind of have the gift of gab, I guess, from a young age. So, a lot of people thought I was kind of made to do what I'm doing now. So that was good.
Well, that's awesome. In doing the program, did you continue to have that kind of like self-belief in getting your first job? You just kind of like push forward, or what was that process like? Let's say like the first couple weeks after you graduated.
Well, I'm not naturally a person. I'm not a big worrier. I don't really worry about the negative. I don't look for a negative outcome. Most times I'll just think that, hey, something that I need to happen will happen. When I was in school, though, in my third semester, you need a break. Everybody needs a break sometime. And I got a break in my third semester of school where one of the guys who was graduating, he was doing on-site stuff for John Short's show. So he just needed an on-site engineer guy. John was, at that time in his late 60s, I think. And, wasn't suddenly going to learn all the new technology. So he just needed someone young who could set up all this stuff. So I would go there. My job was I was only going to work on the Oiler home games, which I think there was about 15 of them had left at that time, or 16, because I started in January of 2001. And Rob Kerr, who was his regular guy, got sick for a month. So I went to school every day, and then I worked every weeknight with John. And I ended up, I was supposed to have a practicum at Ched, and then John at the end said, well, why don't you do it with me? And I was like, great. So switched and did it with him. And I just got the opportunity to do a lot of stuff. So I didn't really have to apply for a job per se. I had my practicum. And then when my practicum was over, John, who was actually owning his own show at the time on Oldies 1260, he just said, well, hey, if you want to work for me, we can do it. But, you're going to have to learn how to do some sales to make some extra money and stuff. So you kind of were like, okay. So I didn't know how to do sales. So I went along in a few sales calls with Bob Suter at the time, who was our sales manager, and just kind of worked out from there. Like I do all my own sales now. I'm still not sold that I'm a great salesman. I just try to be honest with people, and I don't like to oversell. I just say, hey, this is my show. This is who my audience is. And this is why I think your company will benefit from partnering up with me. And, it's worked out. So I never had the self-doubt. Like I had kind of blinders on in a way when I was in school. I never wanted to be like a DJ on the Bear or Virgin Radio or anything like that. And it's not just because it's like, I can sing along to a lot of songs. I don't know who sings the song, right? Like my wife still bugs me about it. I sing along and she's like, who sings that? I have no idea. So I can remember lots of stuff, but music was just not, I didn't care. Like I wasn't somebody who had lots of tapes growing up or, vinyl or anything. And just because I never liked one band enough to want to buy a whole album, right? So I used to get those mixtapes of Dance 99 or whatever it was. But so I kind of was like, I'm going to be in sports. That's what I wanted to do. So I didn't, this kind of sounds bad, but I didn't spend a lot of time becoming good as a DJ in school. Like you had to do shifts where you were on NR92, the radio station at Nate. And, you had to practice your ins and outs and come up with cool stuff. And I was average at best at doing that. And I just said, guys, like, this isn't what I'm going to do. Like, I'm not going to get into radio so I can be a DJ. I don't want to do that. And so I think you have to be honest with yourself and know what you want to do and not like now I'm very flexible. When I got into sports, I was willing to do anything as long as it was related to sports. It didn't matter to me, but I wasn't going to be a disc jockey because I didn't think I had the skill set to do that. So why lie to myself?
Yeah, I like that. And then you did a perfect segue to another topic I want to talk about, because you talk about sports and how you're willing to work with sports. Aside from hockey, what are some other stuff that you've done broadcasting for or done any work for?
Well, when I started out with John, we were on the radio, and then we started anysportanytime.com, which used to broadcast all the games. So I did junior hockey games, and also did junior football games back for the Huskies and the Wildcats. And, won a few championships calling the Husky games. So like they were a really good team. So that was a lot of fun. And then in 2006, I was on the radio, and the Edmonton Rush got an expansion team for pro lacrosse, indoor lacrosse in Edmonton. And I walked up to Bruce Urban, the owner, and I kind of look back at it and laugh. But I walked up to Bruce and I shook his hand. I said, "Hi, Bruce, Jason Gregor. I'm going to be your play-by-play guy." And he kind of looked at me, and I didn't know anything about lacrosse, but I'd been doing play-by-play and I wanted to do it. And I remember Bruce a few years later told me, goes, that confidence kind of sold it on me. It was, so they didn't really do I was working on TSN at the time. So like I knew that they would want to partner up with the All Sports station. Right. So it just kind of worked out. And so I ended up doing play-by-play for lacrosse for 10 years. And I absolutely loved it. It's a fast game. It's a quick game. Great guys to deal with, from, players and coaches. And, Derek Keenan, him and I are still really good friends. And over the years, Jimmy Quinlan, lots of other guys, Kevin Howard, et cetera, that I met. And, it was fun. Like I loved it. And I really didn't know much about lacrosse, to be honest. And I just had to immerse myself in it and ask a lot of questions from the players and coaches and about strategy. And, and play-by-play is a little bit different. You have to know the basics of the game, but your color guy can fill in more of the real intricate details. And so I made sure that I had like a lacrosse player as our color guy over the years, and it worked out really well. So yeah, I've done that, and I cover everything. I love basketball. I grew up like I was a huge baseball fan. I'm not so much anymore. I find it's a little too slow, but in the NFL and CFL, obviously I covered the Eskimos. Like that was kind of my first gig with John, is I got to be like the beat reporter for his show covering the Eskimos. And that was my first ever show, was the Gridiron Show once a week, where I would interview just an Eskimo player, just about life and not necessarily about football. And so that actually really helped me, because then the players, they kind of gained a trust in me, because I got to know them as more than a player, just more as a person. And that opened the door to getting a lot more insight into the game. And, if you ever needed to break stories and stuff, it would help. So I've ran the gamut. Like hockey, obviously, was the sport I've probably played the most, so I knew it the most. But, I like to learn new things, and lacrosse and basketball and football and, mixed martial arts. I've done, I ended up doing some play-by-play and color commentary on mixed martial arts. Mark Pavlich for MFC brought me in, and that was a lot of fun. We ended up doing, those broadcasts on HDNet in the States all over the world. So, I've been really lucky and got to do a lot of different sports.
Well, that's awesome, and especially like the lacrosse aspect. I think it's kind of one of the most underappreciated sports franchises that we've had in Edmonton. Like, I don't think some people realized how good they were.
Oh man, they left at the wrong time. Like, that was such a travesty for Edmonton sports fans, for them to lose that team. The Oilers could have purchased them. They offered them at a bargain basement price, and I don't think the mayor of Edmonton at the time, did his due diligence to understand how important that was for lacrosse. Like, you want your city to be more than just one sports team, and it is too bad because like, luckily for fans in Saskatchewan and Saskatoon, like, the Rush had won their final year. They won the league, and then they've won it 3 times since. So, you had a powerhouse team for a long time, and it's only 8 home games. It wasn't going to take away from Oiler fans. So I've never really understood why. Like, too often, I think in Canada we're a little bit narrow-minded on hockey's got to be the only sport, and thankfully with the increase in both men and women dominating in basketball as Canadians at the NBA level and the WNBA, and in soccer, Alphonso Davies, and so kids are realizing, hockey's a great sport. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't have to be the only sport for Canadians to play.
Definitely. What is something that stands out to you with like something that you were involved in, like a sports event, something that happened, something that you'll never forget? Can you think of like a memory or two that just sticks with you?
There's a few. I did an AJHL playoff game in Camrose one time and they actually gave me a really nice memento for it. It was the longest game in Alberta Junior Hockey League history. It went like 5 overtimes, and you're calling that game, and and I wasn't even playing the game, but even calling it after you're into like the 4th period of overtime, you're just, geez, getting a little tired here. So, but my voice held up, which was great. So I remember that one. It's funny. I remember vividly still the Rush, their inaugural season, where they're an expansion team and they struggled. They went 1-15, but their only win came in Calgary. And Cam Bergman, kind of an unheralded guy, scored with 1 second left in regulation, and they won the game. So, and it was like they won the cup at that point, because it doesn't matter when you play. You're a pro, you want to win. So, that game stands out. And I think just because I was involved, you're a little bit more involved when you're doing play-by-play or color commentary than you are when you're just reporting on the game. So I would probably have to say those two.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think it's cool to dive down that rabbit hole a bit, because a lot of people assume it'll be something from hockey, like just NHL hockey. And in my experiences so far, a lot of my best memories in the things that I do are like some of the smaller but more impactful things in life, just the things that meant more, like at the heart kind of thing, if I can get a little bit hippy dippy here sort of thing. But with that being said, you are very involved in philanthropy, a lot of hard work on your part. So tell me a bit more about that. What inspires you to do the things that you do in giving back to others?
I think a little bit of it just, it's kind of, I guess, in my nature a bit somewhat. I've always, from a young age, my mom told me I always, looked out for others, was very empathetic towards animals at the farm, even, as a beginning there. But I kind of stumbled into it a little bit on my show where, just one December, I felt like, what, I think, I've got a platform now. My show's growing. I think maybe we can do stuff. So I came up with an idea called the Month of Giving in December, where my goal was to raise $25,000 that month and help out the Christmas Bureau and Santa's Anonymous and a few other charities. And so I decided, I put out some phone calls to people I knew and got packages that they were all donated 100%. And then we would auction them off in my show, and everything we raised would go to the charity. And so the first day, so this was in, I think 2010, Christmas of 2010. And, Taylor Hall and Jordan Eberle were on the team, and I'd gotten to know them, and I just said, hey, do you guys mind giving me a signed jersey? And they're like, yeah, sure. I told them what it was for. We put together a dinner package at the Pint, and that was it. And 2 guys ended up bidding each $6,000. like I had one package, but they were bidding so high. I was like, we'll do 2 for 6,000. I didn't, I had to call back and ask for another Oilers jersey. But of course they were like, what, you made how much? I'm like, yeah, I know. So we raised 12 grand the first day. So I was like, oh, I think we'll get to 25. And we ended up having 55,000 that day. And it just kind of went from there. Like I do that every year now, and we've raised almost $1 million just in that. The MS Bike Tour, I started doing that kind of as a gag with Mike Sobel. They had asked me to make it a friendly competition, and that turned out to be a good way to raise money. And I just come up with different ideas that people, I think a lot of people want to help out and donate. They need to be reminded, or you got to come up with a unique package that makes them want to do it. Where we do the ultimate sports fan package on my show, where we raise $12,500. There's 100 entries. It's $125 an entry, and one person wins. We do a reverse draw. Now you can buy 4 entries if you want for $500, and we just do a reverse draw entry live on the show during the day, and the winning person wins would win season tickets to the Eskimos. They would win behind the scenes pass to the Oilers home opener that year, and a tour of the building and dinner at the rink, like stuff you can't necessarily just go out and buy. Kind of unique packages. I would get some signed game use sticks from a player or different things like that, and dinner packages, and usually it was worth the total package was worth around $5,000 or so, and you basically had a 1 in 100 chance to win, but it would sell out in a day, because I think a lot of people it's kind of like gambling in a fun way, and if you lose, regardless, all your money is going to charity. Right. So you just do stuff like that. And then in 2014, I started my own foundation, the Gregor Foundation, and kind of did it in honor of my father. My father grew up in a fairly poor family, didn't have a lot. And my dad was never one to spend money on himself ever. And I had seen Cinderella's Closet, and what they did was they supplied dresses for high school girls who couldn't afford it for their graduation. And I thought that was a really cool idea. But I was like, well, boys work just as hard and they want to look just as good. And my audience was predominantly male. So we started the foundation, where we now supply brand new suits, shirts, ties, shoes, accessories for high school grads. And we've done that now for 5 years. And I team up with Mr. Dirk. And so they order a lot of the stuff through suppliers. So we get it at a better rate. And so, I fundraise that. ATB Financial is now a big title sponsor of that, which is great. And then any excess, my wife and I put in usually $5,000 of our own money, and then it's a big fundraiser for me, kind of for the year. And that's what we do. And I just think it's important to want to help out other people. And I find the feedback from my listeners is always positive, and a lot of them want to help. And the biggest compliment I've probably had in the last 5 or 6 years is people will email me and say, hey, Gregor, you know what? I trust your opinion, because I do my research on which charities I want to partner up with. I like ones that have a low administration fee. So, the majority of the money that we raise is going to people that need it. It's not going to somebody working in the office. So, I like the companies that have like a 24 to 26% admin fee, right? I understand you got to spend some money to make money. I understand it. But anything that's too high, I prefer not to deal with them, because I don't want to raise 10 grand, but only 5 of it's going to the charity and the other 5 is going to people in the office. I don't really like that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. On the topic of the MS fundraiser, I know that they took a bit of a hit with COVID-19 and everything. What's your thoughts on that? Just like open book.
Well, yeah, that's just the reality of 2020. It sucks for so many things. There's a lot of charities that I think are going to take hits. There's a lot of individuals though now that unemployment rate in Alberta and Edmonton specific is pretty high. So, there's going to be some lean times now for a lot of people, I think, for sure. And, if you have the opportunity, 10, 15, $20, if everybody can, do that around the city and surrounding areas, it makes a big difference for a lot of people. And so, I would just recommend to anybody, if you're going to do that, make sure you do some research on which charity you're helping. So, you have ones that have low administration costs, and so they can help more people. But, the MS Bike is a phenomenal, they're just a great foundation to work with. The staff members over the year that I've dealt with are so incredibly friendly. They go above and beyond. I see how they work with people with MS, and they're just a fun group. Like the MS Bike is a lot of fun. The MS Walk that they do, they really try to, they go out of their way to thank the people who take the time to do the ride. And I think that stuff's really important. So, it's unfortunate there's not much you can really do about it, because people, when you've lost your job and suddenly you maybe don't have an extra 100 or 200 or whatever the money is to donate, it's going to impact everybody. So I think in the next year we're probably going to have to find ways to look out for each other even more.
Definitely. And I mean, we kind of talked about like sort of pivoting in such a way as some people's lifestyles are changing. Some people are finding new ways to do the things that they previously did. With COVID-19, did your lifestyle change, or were you able to keep some structure? What was your experience like?
Well, I've been doing my show from home every day since, but to me, it's kind of like doing a live remote. I've done remotes at On the Rocks and car dealerships for years. So, it's the same equipment. I just, you get a line put in your house, and now it's fine. So it's actually, a little bit more convenient in the sense that I don't have to drive in and out of the station. There was the odd day I was just still wearing my pajama pants, which isn't ideal. So, but so from that aspect, it's been okay. Obviously, from a sponsorship aspect, it took a big hit. There's a lot of, some of my title sponsors, a casino, well, they closed down, or not by choice, but just because of the rules. So, you kind of had to pivot. The positive of it was really on my show. I like doing in-depth, long interviews with people and learning more about them. And so we came up with a segment called Story Time, and where we get former athletes and even some current ones, and just talk about their journey and their path. And the listeners really liked it. I liked it. It's been a lot of fun. So, obviously it's great with hockey coming back, don't get me wrong, in the NBA, and everybody's playing sports because that's what I love. But I really like that. And that's something that we're going to keep as part of the show moving forward now. So like anything, I think when adversity rises, there's two ways to deal with it. You can get upset, and you can have kind of a woe is me attitude, and you can let it just, bang you down slowly, or you can just say, you know what, like I have two choices here. I can adapt, and yeah, it'll be challenging, and it might not be what I'm used to, but to me that's kind of fun and interesting. So we had to look at different ways, and whether it came to sponsorships or whether it came to guests on the show and topics we talked about, we came up with a movie watch party that we would do every Tuesday night with our listeners, because usually we would talk about the games on our show. So this way we just did it on Twitter, and people would talk on Twitter about movies, and so they'd vote on the movie to watch for that week. And it was a small way to connect with people, and so it came fine. It's just I've always been one who I've been okay at dealing with change in my life. My father passed away suddenly when I was in school at NAIT, and so I had no choice, and me and my mom were like, okay, well, we're going to still run the farm, so we just had to change, right? And what could we do? So I couldn't live there. I couldn't feed the cows every day like him, so we had to go out, and we got a big 30 by 30 feeder, so I could put in 20 round bales on a Saturday, and it would last for 2 weeks, right? And then the feeder would just kind of collapse as they ate. So, that was totally different, and you just have to adapt to the situation. It's hard, but I think we're much more adaptable as a species than people think, and you can let something overwhelm you, or you can take a deep breath and just say, you know what, I got this. And if you have the ability to not get too worried about it, and don't get overwhelmed, and don't read all negative stories. Like after a while I was like, I don't need to hear more about COVID. I know what's going on. Like, I'm not stupid. Like, don't go out to big parties, and try to be responsible. And so it's still going to be around, but we got to live with it. So I've always taken a mindset, and not necessarily purposely, that's my personality, that I never got too stressed out when negative things happen in my life.
Well, I think that's an important lesson and a reminder for like even me. Like sometimes you control what you can control. Like we can't help that there's a pandemic, but we can help what's on our mind today, and we can help which direction we're moving. You talk a lot about connection, which is something that I really relate to. Like I think that's a big driver as to why I do the job I do, why I interview people on podcasts. When it comes to professional athletes, what's a meaningful connection that you made in a conversation that you didn't anticipate, and what made that so meaningful?
Well, a lot of them's happened recently in story time, but I could go back even to when my first show, when I did the Gridiron show, where we talked football with guys like Albert Reese, who's just an enormous human being. He was a defensive lineman, like 290 pounds. And, he just was telling funny stories about his family running a funeral parlor, and how he used to go and drive the hearse and pick up dead bodies, right? And one time the lid popped open and freaked out some people, right? And so those are funny stories. I had a former player on my show, we were talking just about, dating, and he kind of broke down on the show, and his girlfriend had just dumped him, and he was like really upset about it. And it kind of caught me off guard. I was like, oh my God, like this guy's really kind of putting himself out there. I was like, okay, I have respect for that. And so we ended up talking about it, and he was afterwards, he's like, sorry, man, I didn't expect that to happen. And I was like, well, sometimes you need to get it off your chest. So no better way than just throw it out there to the world, I guess, at the time. So, and then recently we had Mark Fraser on, and of course with Black Lives Matter, and he told stories. He's biracial. As he says, he's half black, he's half white, so he kind of relates to both sides. But because he has dark skin, a lot of people think he's black, and he had to deal with racism. He had to deal with people kind of looking at him sideways because his wife is white, and it was pretty powerful, and he was so eloquent in his words, and he really, I think, made you think. And then George Larac, who I've known for years, and George and I kind of become friends. He's like anybody who's ever met George, he's a pretty funny guy. And he on my show, we were just talking about him enduring racism, and his parents didn't even want to go to his games, so he kind of rode his bike to his games. But he also talked, and he opened up that his father was abusive when he was young, and it was really powerful because there's so many listeners who were texting into the show, and I never had to deal with that, my father, thankfully, but I have empathy for it. I know a lot of people that have, and that when you can get into those real life stories, and people can hear how somebody that maybe they look up to, or just somebody else that they know, is like, oh, they went through the same thing, and this is how he dealt with it. And I asked George about, like, when was the moment when you maybe stood up to your father? And he just said that, when I was 16 years of age, and that was the time. And so he did it, and then his father never hit him again. Right. And he was he was pretty big at that time. For George at 16, it was like 6'2" or 6'3", but still it takes a lot of courage to have to stand up to a father and say enough's enough. And so that was a really powerful one that stands out for sure.
Well, I mean, a lot of people that go a long length in their career or in any of their goals have been through a lot of stuff. Like, they've had to put up with a lot of stuff. Can you think of times in your career, like, your mindset is very, like, forward moving. You don't waste too much time with any of your obstacles, but, like, has there been anything that's just stopped you in your tracks and, like, made you a bit hesitant, or made you a bit just self-conscious or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. You have little things here and there. I don't know if I've ever had anything that just kind of stopped me in my track. There was a while with social media, you get a lot of interactions from people, and you end up arguing with some troll, and you're like, afterwards, I'm like, what am I wasting my time with? Why do I, eventually the best advice, I read a lot of books. And so I read a book that said, why would you take criticism from someone that you would never ask advice from? And that really resonated with me. And it was just like, you know what? It's totally true. Like, you can criticize me all you want, but your opinion doesn't matter to me, right? Because this person, or, some random person who has no expertise in how to write an article or be on the radio, they don't really know what they're talking about. So they can express their opinion, but it's kind of an uninformed one. So if I wouldn't ask them for advice, why would I care that much about their criticism? And so ever since then, it's been a lot better. Like, sure, every now and then you still want to, tell somebody off on the internet, because, some people are just like, I don't really like, I'll stand up for myself, and I don't have a problem with it. And, I'll tell somebody, like, this is why you're incorrect. I try to do it in a more mature fashion maybe than I did 7 or 8 years ago. But for the most part, it doesn't get to me nearly as much anymore. And I just kind of remind myself, you know what, you can read the comment, away you go, and then move on. Because, that person, like, I'm never one that would just reach out to someone I've never met. Even if I watch a lot of shows, I would listen to a lot of radio shows. I would never just reach out to someone randomly and want to rip them about something of their opinion. It just was never in my nature. So I'm always kind of like, man, that person they must want attention. They must be really frustrated or angry in life. And it's not really about me. It's more so about them.
For sure. I mean, the internet makes people so brave. Like, would they actually go up to somebody in person and say some of the things that they say? And the other thing is, looking at some of the accounts, I'll see some of the troll comments that people make on different other people's accounts. And, like, it's like they created that account just to be a troll. Like, I mean, yeah. They can't even show their face half the time.
Yeah, I always, I ask someone, I'm like, if you're that strong in your convictions, why are you anonymous? Right? Like
Yeah.
you should be proud. You should be proud, and it's okay to disagree with someone. You can strongly disagree with someone, but you should be courageous. You should be proud enough to put your name to it. So, because if you believe that strongly in it, then you shouldn't be embarrassed by it.
So now we're going to jump into your role with Oilers Nation. How did that come to be? I think Oilers Nation is like super cool in just how they've grown over the years. So tell me a bit more about that.
Well, it's kind of interesting. It happened in 2007, just out of the blue. Clark and Jay, who are the owners of the Nation, they reached out to me and would say, "Hey, we'd like you to write for us." And so we met at a restaurant and we chatted. And at that point, I'd owned my radio show for a few years, and I guess I kind of got the entrepreneurial bug a little bit. So I was interested in writing for them. I'd done some writing before in Edmonton sports scene, and kind of small papers. Just you kind of have to work your way up. And so I felt like I could write, and I had good access. And so I was getting frustrated at times because I would have good topics on my show, and then I would see 2 days later someone listening to the show would write about it. So I was like, you know what, I think I want to write about my own stuff. And that's normal. Like they just hear it. Like a lot of people, you take someone's idea and then you make it your own. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
As long as you're not plagiarizing, and they were never doing that. But so I went to them and they asked me to write, and I said, well, I'd be very interested in writing as long as I can I buy in. And so I bought in at 20%. And just because I felt like I'd have more of a say, and then I knew what was going on, and we'd kind of help build it. And so that's kind of where it got started. And then like Clark's the real tech person. Like he knows how to like build a site and all the backdoor stuff, which like I'm clueless. I'm not writing code or anything like that, right? I don't have that expertise at all. And so that he would help out and look to oversee that. And then Jay's the business guy, and he had a background in how to kind of build businesses. He'd worked in the banking industry for many years, so it was good partnership. And so it's been a lot of fun. We've expanded. Probably like those guys have big dreams, and it's good to partner up with people that you learn from and that you get along with, and that they've like Clark especially and Jay, like those guys are kind of fearless in business. Like I don't have the same business acumen necessarily as they do. And so I like watching what they do and learning from it. And so it's kind of, it's expanded us into a lot of different areas, which has been extremely fun. And, it's good. It's like I wanted to write. I wanted to be under my name. I didn't want to be, anonymous for anyone. It wasn't going to benefit me at all. And so, I don't do the zany stuff that some of the writers do on there. Because that's, you got to stick to who you are and what you're true to. And so like, I can have fun and everything, but I can't make memes. I'm not the artistic guy who's going to do Photoshop or anything. Like I don't have that ability. I'm envious. I wish I did.
That's awesome. Are there two things that you can think of that you've learned from those guys?
Oh man, lots. I think you learn a lot of different things. From those guys, just a lot of different things like in business. And okay, so because my show is very different, right? Because it's not a brick and mortar, right? And even on the internet, it wasn't necessarily brick and mortar, but with them, it's learning out how to want to build that company and buy up other sites. And so now we own Hockey Fights and Daily Face Off and NHL Numbers, and so you learn kind of how to do an expansion into I wouldn't say takeovers because you didn't take it over. You just were expanding your brand and making it bigger. And then from that, obviously, they're involved in Oodle Noodle, which is a totally different thing. And that's very brick and mortar, and where your margins are extremely important from a day to day, and how, your margins are going to change huge if all of a sudden you're ordering too much food, right? And it gets wasted. So, those are things like I didn't have that really in my business in radio, because I didn't have where if I got too many advertisers, it was going to hurt me. Right. So you learn a lot of different things that I'm interested in. And we feed off each other quite well. We have our meetings, and then we'll go months where we don't really have to talk business. We just talk about life. And so it's been really good. It's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot over the last, I guess, 12, 13 years being associated with those guys.
That's awesome. So I've noticed that fitness plays a pretty prevalent role in your life. Like, can you tell me more about that?
Well, I never worked out when I was younger, really. I didn't, Um, I look back at pictures and there was a time like the most I ever was, I think I was like 209 pounds, which is not a really good look on me, right? It kind of had a little bit of a fat face at the time. And so I never really worked out. My brother worked out, he played hockey. He worked out all the time. Like I think I lifted weights like, one summer for 4 weeks once in my life. And that was it. But I wanted to get healthier. And so I started training at a place called Spark Sport Conditioning that Kim Layton runs. And that was on the south side. And actually, no, that's not true. I started with Johnny Sinclair first at World Health because I wanted to put in a workout feature into my show. And so I felt like the only way to do that was if I was working out. I could ask better questions if I was doing it every day. So, John's gone on to really big things now in the States. He's an awesome trainer. And then when he left, I went to Spark, and that was, it was more CrossFit. It was a little bit, it's a different type of workout. It was more intense, which was good to me. You kind of push yourself, you can feel completely exhausted and spent after that. And so it just kind of expanded and worked out. And then I moved away though. I moved to the West End, and it didn't make sense to drive all the way to the south side. And when you work out, it's got to be somewhat convenient, or otherwise it's just, you're not going to happen. Like, unless you're a diehard maybe, and you want to drive 45 minutes or an hour to a gym, that's not me. So, I expanded, and now, I work out at Custom Fit with Jeff and those guys. And it's important that you feel better. When you work out, at least I do. Now, granted, that's the one thing in COVID that's probably slacked for me, which I'm not a big fan of. I'm eating way better, but I'm not, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm working out as much as I should be or much as I like to. So that's something I want to get back on track with, but it's just fun. You could push yourself physically, and it's a real great mental test with yourself to just say, you know what, I want to beat my personal best in the deadlift. Or I set a goal and say, okay, this is what, I want to deadlift 400 pounds. And then you work your way up to that. And then you also have to know your limitations. I got long arms. I'm never going to be good at bench press. I worked on it, got all the proper technique, but there was still a limitation where I like to joke, the guys with the alligator arms, barrel chested, short arms, they crush it on a deadlift, on a bench press, right? So that doesn't mean because some guys is bench pressing more than me that I'm an inferior human. It's just certain body types are better for certain things. Right. It's just like in CrossFit. If you're a 5'8" to 5'9" guy, you got a big advantage over the 6'3", because when you're doing a lot of the movements, you just have a shorter distance to move, and that's a clear advantage. Right. So where I have a runner's body, and when we were doing 400 meter runs and then get back into just a set of 225 deadlifts, well, I could do really good at that because I could run better than the short guys. So everybody's body type, you got to find out what works for you. But I just like it for the challenge of trying to push yourself to do a little bit better.
It's so true. And I mean, just like going back to that theme of like owning who you are, whether it's like following your passion in your career or sticking to your brand in your writing, or understanding when you have long arms and when you have short arms and what to do with them, kind of thing. When it comes to like, do you ever look back at how you felt you were as a high school student and think back to where you are now and think, I would have never expected myself to be where I am now? Like, do you ever have reflections like that?
Oh, yeah. I never once, well, I didn't even know you could own your own radio show. So, that in itself is something for sure. My family life is very good. Now, I'm lucky. My family's always been close, but, like my wife and I get along great. We have a loving son, so that part's awesome. I always thought I was going to get married, but I never wanted to get married young. That's what I always knew. So I stuck to that. But you know what? I think when I look back, and I was somebody who I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was younger. I was always a pretty smart person. Like when I went back to college prep, like I had 99 in math and 90s in English. Like when I want to put work into something, I think I'm pretty smart. But in high school, I just kind of did enough just to get by. I wasn't motivated enough yet. But I look at people that sometimes you want to rush your kids. They're like, well, you got to go to university at 18. And just because the neighbor's son or daughter is going doesn't mean you have to go, right? And just because your neighbor is on a keto diet doesn't mean it works for your body, right? Like there's so many different things that work for different people. And it just took me more time to figure out what I needed to do. And I kind of got a big wake up call. Actually, it came, and I'm I'm a spiritual person. Like I grew up Catholic. We went to church and everything, but we were not like a staunch religious family. My mom always taught us to question certain things. And, and like, I thought the Bible was a great guideline. I didn't believe everything in it. Like I wanted, I'm not like anybody who tries to tell me that the Bible's against gay people. I'm like, really? Well, the Bible also says you can kill your son and all these other things. So which part are we going to use to benefit our argument? So I'm just more about, hey, I think, don't kill people, try to be nice to people. And, those are the basic things that I learned. But I got in a car accident when I was 23, and just ran a stop sign on a road that I'd driven many times. I don't really remember it. I just remember kind of waking up and I got T-boned on my passenger side and somehow unconsciously drove into the ditch between all these big trees and didn't hit one. And, my car was totally written off, and, you're in the hospital and they thought I had a broken neck, and turns out I just had nothing. And I just remember afterwards saying, you know what, I wasn't really going anywhere in my life at that time. I was at school. I didn't really like it. I was just kind of, half-assing everything, to be honest. And that was kind of my wake-up call, where I was like, you know what, somebody's giving me a warning to say, hey, wake up. And it wasn't like I instantly the next day, all of a sudden, here I am and I'm successful. Like that happened in 1996. And, I didn't go back to school until 2000. It took me a few years, but I got on a better path on where I wanted to go in life. And I felt I was more in a direction. I was more responsible than I had been. And so some people maybe have that drive and focus right from a young age. And then there's people like me. I kind of call myself a late developer, right? In a lot of things. I didn't work out. I didn't eat healthy until I was a little bit older. And it's never too late to start. I think too many people think, well, geez, I've never done something, I can't start now. Why? You can always start now. There's, that you can't change your past. You can only change your future. And you can, whether you're 40 years old and you've never worked out, or you're 20, you've never worked, you can start tomorrow if you want. And, I think a lot of people are more capable of it. You got to say, you know what, it's up to you. You can't. Too often, I think now we want to look for excuses not to do something rather than just the reasons why we can do something.
I like that. That's awesome. Just in making no excuses, just like think about what life is all about and don't waste it, kind of thing. Like I can kind of relate on like that second chance experience. Like I had a close call once, and it made me reflect on like, okay, like, do I want to do a job that just pays my bills, or do I want a job that feels good, that gives me excitement in the morning to wake up and do things and talk to cool people and make people better? So my next question for you, this is a question that I ask every single one of my guests, and eventually I put it into a compilation with some cool, inspiring background music, so the pressure's on. The question is, if you were to give one piece of advice to someone on how to live their life to the fullest in the most authentic way, what would that piece of advice be?
Ooh, deep question. I think the first thing would be, don't get caught up in thinking you have to do it every day, right? I consider myself a hard worker. There's some days I waste hours doing nothing on the computer, right? You just go down a rabbit hole. So the number one thing I would say is, don't put this expectation that it's got to be every day, every waking moment of your life that you're driven and you're focused. I think what you have to be is find something you're passionate about. And when you're passionate about something, all of a sudden it doesn't feel like work, right? It naturally becomes something you want to do. You get up, you're excited for it. So I would say, and I didn't find mine until I was a little bit older too. So I think too many people get caught up in worrying about how your life is and then comparing it to others. So my best advice is stop comparing to others. Do what's going to work for you, because somebody can make 200 grand and that's what makes them happy. You can make 60 grand and be just as happy because maybe you need less things, right? So there's I don't think there's a one set course, but I can only speak for me. Find something you're passionate about. When you have passion in your life, life's better. Like, I'm passionate about the farm. Like, I really love it. Like, I like going to the farm. It sounds dumb, but you're shoveling cow shit. I get something out of it, right? You clean the pen. Oh, look, the pen's clean. Like, I like birthing cows. It's it's kind of a unique thing when you get to save an animal. If you weren't there, maybe it would have died. So that's very different from my sports talk radio stuff. And that's kind of just fun, right? You get to babble on about sports and, whatever, right? So find something you're passionate about. And I think that is going to make you much more happy in life than anything else. And, trying to do something on social media. I think find something you're passionate about and life will be better.
Definitely. And then there's a second piece to the puzzle here where I ask my guests to give my audience a challenge for the day. And so I'll get you to frame it like this. Your challenge for the day is, and then just whatever you want the challenge to be, you'll tell the audience. So whenever you're ready.
Your challenge for the day will be nice to someone who isn't nice to you. It's very difficult, but you will end up feeling better. And in a strange way, that person might actually feel better. It's hard. It's very difficult. But if you can do it, good on.
That is awesome. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.